All right. So we are here with Rebecca Fox. For those of you who've been at the Stoa for a while now, you might know Rebecca from her Chapel Perilous series at the Stoa, um, sort of like a celebration of not knowing, and and she's returning to the Stoa to do something called the Ritual Studio that will be situated in our Wisdom Gym. And so we thought it'd be a good idea to connect here, record it, so people can get excited about the series. And yeah, I thought it might be a good. So I'm curious if you have anything you want to add to that framing, Rebecca. But I thought it'd be a good um, way to start to talk about rituals and how you got into rituals, and how we kind of like that synchronicity moment when we spoke a couple months now, and we're like, oh wow, we're both like geeking out about rituals. So yeah, maybe we can
Yeah,
start
we've
there.
all picked up the same books. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I I grew up atheist. I was raised atheist, so there weren't much rituals at all in my childhood, like formal, like you're doing a ritual now, like going to church or whatever people who grew up religious experience. Um, and obviously there were other forms of ritual, but no sort of formal ones. And then as a teenager, I got really into Wicca and neo-paganism, and that was a big part of my life. And then I sort of became a bit of a skeptic. And I guess for a long time, there weren't any formal rituals in my life at all. And in fact, I kind of deliberately knocked out any kind of ritualistic behavior because it seemed not because skepticism or atheism or any of those sort of movements that I was tangentially involved with were directly hostile to ritualistic behavior, but because I'd sort of just picked up on this general vibe in that community that doing things like chanting in the woods was a bit silly. And maybe that's unfair. Maybe there are lots of skeptics out there chanting in the woods, but I wasn't doing it, and I found when I sort of loosened up a bit philosophically and moved more towards an agnostic position, the potential for that sort of ritualistic engagement with the world seemed like it opened up again. And I remembered all those things that I did and all the chanting in the woods and all the other ritualistic behavior that I'd enjoyed when I was younger. I was like, well, why don't I get back into that? And that was more or less around the time we were doing Chapel Perilous, which was in itself a kind of ritualistic endeavor. And that's a couple of years ago now, isn't it? So I've just been sort of building up my own ritualistic practice, and lately talking to friends who seem like they're in need of rituals and kind of helping them to think about what they might want to do and stuff. So it's become my thing.
And yeah, in the book that I was reading before we jumped on that call was The Disappearance of Rituals by Byung-Chul Han. And when I read that book, I was like, oh shit, okay, I got to step up my ritual game. Like rituals seem
Yeah.
like a thing. And then there's a lot of synchronicities. A lot of other people were talking about rituals. And so it became clear, like, given how much you were geeking out about rituals, I'm like, okay, let's do something on this. And so this idea of doing the ritual studio emerged. And perhaps you can talk about maybe your like emerging ritual practice that you're doing.
Yeah.
How that's going to be ported in the ritual studio.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out a way. What I don't want to do is to create sort of scientific secular rituals. I think that ritual isn't the sort of thing that can be scienced in that way. I think the scientific epistemology is the wrong way to approach it, and I think people who try and do that will fail, either because they can't prove that their rituals work scientifically, or because their rituals are so boring because they've just tried to like science it out and they don't have it. There's no magic left in it. There's no art left in it. So that's my other interest. I'm an artist, and that is the direction which I'm coming at from with all of my ritual practice. I've realized that the line that I thought was so clear between my art practice and my I don't know a non-cringy way to say this, but spirituality. There's like that line is not as clear as it used to be. Let's just say, like, art and spirituality and art and ritual are kind of merging in. Just for example, I've had lots of conversations with people and tried really hard to get into visualization practice, and I just couldn't do it. I can't see things in my mind's eye. It's really, really difficult. And then it struck me one day that when people are talking about visualization, maybe they're talking about the same thing that happens to me when I have an idea for a painting or an idea for a sculpture. Like it's not like they're seeing a picture. And maybe that sounds silly, but I really thought that they were seeing a movie in their head. And anyway, so that's just a little example of how my thought about, and reading books like The Disappearance of Ritual really highlighted for me that, yeah, the boundaries between ritual and real life aren't as clear as I thought they were. So I've been making space in my life for deliberate rituals and trying to kind of like have a, because within neo-paganism, obviously there's a big focus on the moon. So phases of the moon are a good thing to do. Celebrate the full moon, celebrate the dark moon. And then the wheel, what they call the wheel of the year, the 8 seasonal, so that's the solstices and the equinoxes and the cross quarter days. For those, I've been going and hanging out with a really lovely group of druids, and getting back into being with other people doing ritual, which is really humbling for me, because I kind of like one of those people who wants to make it up for myself and have it really idiosyncratic and mine. But again, the Disappearance of Ritual books really stressed to me the importance of community in ritual. So the fact that perhaps not everything is exactly aesthetically how I would do it in their rituals is actually quite good for me, because it allows me to be part of something bigger than myself. And then the moons are mine. The moons are mine alone, and I invent my own rituals and have experimented with different things. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of embarrassing to talk about, but yeah, lots of movement and lots of kind of movement-based meditation, that sort of thing. But definitely a very somatic experience, not because that's another thing that I want to avoid, the very head-based rituals where you're just reading off a sheet of paper. I want to bring everything in, because I feel like I've neglected that aspect of my experience, especially in anything beyond like my, intimate relationships for many years. Like I've been a person who lived in my head for a long time, and moving into my body is good.
And to tie back in, Jonathan Harris, who came to the Stoa and did a session on life art, I really like his tripartite of ritual, because there's a whole body of work, academic work, on what ritual actually is. And his tripartite, I think, kind of captures a lot of that literature. And he sees there's 3. There's rituals around building character, and those are like routines that you do essentially. And then there's rituals around building like communitas or community, and those are like ceremonies. And then the last rituals are rituals around building or like invoking a catharsis around some kind of area or some kind of transformation. And he calls these life art, but it's also like a spell essentially.
Yeah.
And then the latter category is what I'm sensing you're mostly doing. And so I'm curious what you think about his model, and how you describe your like the merging practice that you're doing is like, you have like a little witch's hut, and people have like kind of like a ritual that they want, and they come to you, and then you write it to them, and then you hand it, so they can do it on at their leisure. So yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, that I think from my reading, I think what I'm doing is something about is transformative rituals. That's what I'm interested in doing. I love nattering away to people about their problems, and like getting involved and thinking about them, thinking about ways, unconventional ways that they might be solved, and not even necessarily problems, but I love people, and I love talking about their lives. And a couple of times it's come up where, for example, I've had a friend, actually not really a friend, just an acquaintance, who went through a really bad breakup, and it just popped into my head that night after I spoke to her. Wow, this would be she could really do with a ritual of closure around this issue. And I think what the rituals, so that's the sort of thing I'm talking about, creating rituals that sort of, they are providing a new explanatory framework for the person to see whatever their situation is, and then allowing them to kind of enact that so it feels more real. Because like when you're at therapy and the therapist says something, you're like, yeah, that's definitely right, but you've understood it intellectually, but you haven't fully rocked it. Like it hasn't hit home. And then eventually, hopefully, maybe if it's right, it one day does hit home. So I'm trying to create rituals that do that all at once, that that give you that they're based in, reality, in the real psychological situation that you're in, or practical situation, but then they also access a deeper level where they're kind of like, yeah, it's like any great art. Like you see an art piece or you see a movie and you see someone falling in love or someone in grief or whatever, and you're experiencing it with them as the viewer, and there's something about that that chimes in you, and then you feel like you understand yourself deeper, and you understand the whole nature of love and the whole nature of grief or whatever it is that you're watching. I think rituals are similar, but if done well, potentially more powerful, because you're not just watching, you're actually like in there doing it, feeling it. That's kind of like the kind of ritual theater aspect, which I'm really interested in. I love like looking at traditions in which people, enact ritual sort of mystery plays that have encode secrets about how we live and how we all work. And I don't see why that has to be something consigned to the past. I think we can act those out in our local woodland whenever we damn well please. And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, and then add to that, there's like a need for sophistication in doing it. Right, there's like an artistry with it. You shouldn't just do random rituals, and I think that's where you come in, if people need help with it. And so this ritual studio thing that's being launched in the Wisdom Gym in August, and the dates will be on this video. Like, what's that going to look like?
Okay, I'm thinking, well, it's very experimental. So, I mean, who knows really? We'll see where it goes. Because what I want to do is get talking to other people interested in ritual and get an idea of where they're at and what they're thinking about, what ritual means to them, and sort of explore all sorts of ideas, particularly with people who I feel like are more likely to be on my wavelength, who are kind of, in that kind of agnostic, like, I'll try anything position that I am. But what I really want to do is actually do some rituals. I have a great little exorcism that's on my Substack currently, which I thought might be a good candidate for doing live at the Ritual Studio. But I want to get some hands-on experience of doing rituals. I want to get chatting to people about any kind of situations in their lives that they think could do with ritualizing. I have a suspicion that lots of these common problems, I think we'll find that, like, it's the stuff people write to problem pages about, like, I can't get over my boyfriend, I've got this, I've got that, like stuff that people have issues with, and perhaps bigger philosophical problems that people have. Like, I have another ritual currently on my Substack, which is about this issue that I had with free will, like the whole free will determinism thing, like, how do you make sense of all that? So I made up a ritual to try and help myself through that. And I think so there's those kind of like life problems, philosophical problems, any kind of problems, or not even problems, just things that you want to, find more fulfillment in or be enriched or whatever. So I want to talk to people about situations and potentially put together some rituals for them, within the weeks that we're running the Ritual Studio, and have some hands-on experience with real life rituals, and then some general, more theoretical chit chat, just so that we can all learn and figure out what's going on. Yeah.
Something like another kind of candidate for a type of ritual is just like letting go of something, like,
yeah,
you already maybe like propositionally let it go, or you let it go like by leaving that environment, but there's something that's still there, and oftentimes it's some kind of like symbolic and theatrical act is needed just to like release the energy.
Something weird happened to me when I was like 10. I was on a ferry going on holiday to a little Scottish island, and it was a really choppy water, like really, like, I mean, as a 10-year-old, it was quite scary, being on this big boat and all the water going everywhere. And it can't have been that bad though, because there was bagpipes, like bagpipe people playing on the deck. So, but it was intense, and I remember it quite vividly, and I don't have many memories from that age. And this man came over who was like my dad's age. I was with my dad, and he asked if he could speak to me. He asked my dad if he could speak to his daughter, which is a bit odd, but my dad was like, yeah, sure. And he says to me, would you throw this into the sea for me? And he gives me a ring. And I'm like a little kid, like, sure, off it goes. And that's the end of it. And I come back to that in my memory and think, what was that guy? He was letting go of something really big, really big. I mean, a ring could signify all sorts of things. And I can't even remember I can't remember whether it was had a stone in it. It could have been an engagement ring, it could have been a wedding ring, it could have been like his grandmother's ring, who knows. But like that, letting go is so difficult. And it's almost like this great technology of, you put the kind of nebulous human attachment into this one object, and now you actually can let go because it's physical. Like you can't let go of stuff that's not concretized into one thing. Yeah, rituals for letting go. You could make 1 million, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, and that might be the next one up on my Substack.
Yeah. And so what we're doing to launch the series is we're engaging in a ritual, and you kindly designed a ritual for me. And I guess the backstory there was, if people recall, the first birthday of the Stoa, I had this maybe the end of the Stoa party, and I was genuinely thinking of perhaps ending the Stoa. I left everyone in suspense if I was going to do it or not. Then we had this party that served as a ritual, and it really just, it was beautiful, and it just had this alchemic effect on me, and I felt renewed. And then I took a week off, and then year 2 came, and I was excited. And when it came to the Stoa's last birthday, so it was the second birthday, I didn't do anything like that. There was no sort of like ritual for renewal. And I was just like bouncing around from one thing to the next, and there's just like stuck energy. And there feels like there's something for me to do to like go deep within, do whatever needs to be done there, and then arise. And so you kindly designed a ritual for me, but one that is sort of a universal. Anyone could kind of engage in it as well. So perhaps you can kind of, we'll share there's a link to it. You already wrote it up and everything, but perhaps you can kind of speak on that, what that ritual is.
Yeah, sure. So I kind of got this, and this is an idea that we talked about during Chapel Perilous as well, because we were reading this Zen master from like 15th, 16th century, something like that. And he has this brilliant quote, and it's something like, you have to finish dying before you can be reborn. And I had this general sense of like, I think, you know, when you get to the end of something, or you get to a point where things start to, like your enthusiasm has gone, or you've lost something, it just starts to feel gray, and you don't have the energy you had anymore. And there's this tendency to just like distract ourselves and keep going and keep pushing on and keep pushing on. And I think it's just a general sort of, you know, I don't know, Protestant work ethic, whatever, like this part of our culture to constantly be seeking progress. And one of the things, getting more interested again in pagan philosophy, I guess, or pagan mythos, became very aware that this idea of like everything being linear and going on forever is a bit nuts, and it's a bit, you know, it's like our thing, our 20th century, 21st century, whatever one we're in now, our thing that we believe in now, but it's not the way it's always been. And traditionally, there's been a much more sort of cyclical sense of time and a cyclical sense of life. And, you know, I mean, pagans love the seasons, we love the moon. So yeah. Oh, I said we. Anyway, so this is what the ritual is about. It's about going willingly down, into taking a descent willingly and then coming back up. Because I really think that the problem is that everyone, and like I was thinking of Peter when I wrote it, but everyone just pushes themselves too hard and pushes and pushes and pushes and tries to keep going, and then is eventually clawed down because they're exhausted emotionally, physically, whatever, and they just crash. But perhaps if we stepped into that space, into that lower, deeper space willingly, we might actually find that there's something really incredible waiting there to be transformed, and we can come back up, not fight and claw our way back up, but sort of come up naturally, sort of growing up like a seed or something out of the earth. And that's the sort of ritual, that's the sort of mythological frame for the ritual, because I think it's a mythic problem. It's the myth of progress, and it's manifests in all our lives in different ways. And mythic problems need mythic solutions, and that's what this ritual, that's what all ritual really is. So yeah, that's kind of what I tried to do. And I tried to create the ritual that you needed, not the one you wanted.
Yeah, that's well said. I like that, that Protestant work ethic, like full speed ahead, nonstop, or at least the pressure to operate.
Yeah.
And Byung-Chul Han even wrote a book called, I think, Burnout Society, that just mapped that out beautifully. And I find the more that I'm becoming more spiritual, or like attuned to the daemon, the sacred, or whatever, there's just like a sensitivity to a rhythm that's
Yes.
just here. And it's like something about honoring that rhythm, and something about rituals as a tool to honor that, and be a part of it. And so this is why I'm really excited about, engaging in getting like a ritual literacy at the Stoa, having this series with you. Because I do think there's like this, experts are needed to know like the deep code of how to do rituals well, so we can go to them. And then hopefully more of us have like a ritual agency, so we can engage in rituals in our own life. All of them, like that tripartite that Jonathan mentioned. So yeah, I'm super stoked about this. And
Yeah, I'm really excited about it, all aspects. I love the academic stuff. I love nerding out on the academic stuff. I love the actual doing the rituals. It's really fun, and really, like, I've been thinking of it as a time when all these things are together, like your action and your thoughts and some sort of sense of greater meaning, all together, all at the same, which is rare, because I feel like everything's scattered. Like I'm making dinner, but I'm listening to a podcast. Everything's scattered all the time in my life. And I feel like I'm not the only one who lives that way. So times when I bring it all together. And then I'm also really interested in literal ritual tech. Like what happens if so part of the ritual that I've designed for you, the Ascent of Peter, I'm calling it, which is a little bit of a joke, but is like you have to put a heavy, not heavy, but a weight on your chest as part of the ritual. So it's like that's technology, and that's kind of inspired from something that I heard that maybe was done in like the Orphic, I think. Like, so there'd be dream incubation, and they would have gone into a sort of, anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, I'm like a magpie, picking up all these little bits of technology that I'm finding as I do my research, and as I broaden my because I'm very interested in reading about historical rituals, not just reading about the psychology and stuff. I want to read about what people are actually doing. So I'm picking up all these little bits and saying, oh, what could that do? What could that do? That's interesting. And that's part of the ritual studio. That's going to be part of the fun of it. Like, let's try some of this technology and see what happens. Yeah.
And so all the information will be to participate in this ritual that we're going to do before the launch of Ritual Studio, and then how to participate in Ritual Studio will be in the description of this video, and then I'll announce on my Substack and stuff. So before, and I think we hit all the points that we wanted to discuss. So I'll kind of hand it over to you for anything you think was left unsaid.
The only thing I can think is to say, it would just be so cool if people did this ritual with us, did the ascent of whoever you are, the Ascent of Peter. It's an overnighter. So, and then you'll come on the call the next morning with us, and I will bring you back up, so to speak, through meditation. Well, sort of through a movement meditation type thing. And it won't be weird. Well, it might be weird, but it'll be fun. And yeah, wouldn't it be interesting if we all do it, or a lot of us do it, and then we can all chat and compare experiences and see what worked and what didn't, and we can start sort of I won't say sciencing it, but like, yeah, we can start seeing what happens. And this is something that this is not, I didn't just make it up and then put it out in the world. I've been experimenting with the descent ritual, the descent and ascent ritual for myself for like a year or so. So I'm pretty confident, at least it's changed stuff inside me. It's rearranged the way I think about the world. And I think it really is chipping away at that myth of progress. I just don't think it's so embedded in me as it used to be. So there's like, that's a big kind of like grandiose claim, I suppose. But maybe if enough people got involved in doing this sort of stuff, we could slowly, push back the tide on that whole crazy idea that our modern culture seems to have, which I think would be good. So yeah, I just want people to come. It'll be fun. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, totally. And I'll be doing it at my family cottage. So all alone, no tech, and then in the morning after, I'll be jumping on the Zoom call. So that should be fun. And yeah, so Rebecca, thank you. Let's get our ritual.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Let's stop recording.